Hi, Jade. Welcome to the Cosmic Heartist podcast. I am so excited to have you here. It is an honor. I would love if we could start by you sharing about yourself, about your favorite things, and about, yeah, just what are the things that make you so happy to be alive?
Oh, I love the way that we're starting this. So good. Happy to be here. Really honored to be here and to have this conversation with you, and very excited to see what comes through. In response to what makes me feel alive, I would say that nature makes me feel alive. Dance makes me feel alive. I like improv dance. I like intuitive dancing. And recently, flowers, gardening has been really doing something for me. And that's when you maybe can start to tell you're getting a little bit older. You're like, I love flowers and gardening and plants. And I love drawing, I would say. Drawing and expressive painting. There's so much. Crystals also make me feel alive. Meditation makes me feel alive as well. Um, yeah, really anything that kind of brings us back to heart, which I know we'll talk a lot about, and also divine essence, I would say.
Mm, Love that juicy magic. And it's interesting that you say that this is how you can tell that we're getting old, that we like gardening and flowers, because isn't that it's just like we're becoming young again. Like once we start getting old, we start enjoying what we enjoyed when we were young again, because I think more often than not, we're trying to reconnect with the inner child within us because we start realizing actually our inner child knows exactly what we need and has always known exactly what
Mhm.
we need, but it's all the conditioning that has kind of made us get lost amidst all of the noise.
Yeah.
Um, so I love that. I love flowers. I just started a, a business with like astrology infused flowers. So it's like flowers based on someone's sun, moon, rising. It's really fun.
So cool. I'm gonna have to hear more about it. So cool. No, I feel like
Yeah.
flowers are like this, they're like little portals in themselves, right? They're little like portals of life, and they
Yes.
show us so much. They teach us about the cycles of life, and they're just like ephemerally beautiful. Like there's something so like in essence just fleetingly beautiful about flowers that I feel like just teaches you about like beauty and impermanence in just in time and in like our human selves. I don't know. I've been buying flowers for myself every every week. This is like a new thing
Yes.
that I'm doing for myself, and it's just I like to work next to a vase, and it's just adds, it really adds.
Changes everything up because it's like it's inspiration, right? And it's such a beautiful muse. And like you're saying, they're
Yes.
like lives within themselves in one stem. And it's so easy to get mesmerized by like one flower. And then to notice like how much is going on within that one flower, all the colors, all the movement, all the curvature, like, and then it's easy to be like, wow, life is magic. When we surround ourselves with things like this, then we realize and we're like, okay, actually, I am an artist. Like all these things that we doubt about ourselves, we start becoming aware of because we're surrounding ourselves with things that are similar.
Yes. Yes. And like I feel like what comes forward as you say that is truly like the world around us, the most natural, primal, like essential parts and components of our earth and of the universe are the pieces that we actually are meant to pay attention to and what brings us back into self. And um I don't know if you've ever seen those. This is just coming to mind. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen those videos of like comparisons between like parts of your body and nature. Have you seen those before? Like how
Yes,
veins look like leaves and how
yes.
like wrinkles look like bark. Anyway, that just came to
Yeah,
mind.
yeah, yeah. How like the thumbprint is like the middle of a tree trunk
Mhm,
and
mhm,
stuff like that. It's
mhm.
very cool. And what this is actually making me think of is it's cool to surround ourselves with um things that make us remember beauty and that make us feel alive. And that's actually what we do when we're building and looking for a community that we resonate with, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I have a lot to say on community. We can kind of dive into it today.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's like, I think connecting nature to community, like it's all just about connection. Like we're all ultimately in our hearts of hearts, like why we go on personal development journeys and why we find ourselves on spiritual journeys and everything that, we find ourselves like looking for or seeking in, you could say, in the healing journey. Ultimately, it brings us back to connection, and it's connection with ourselves, of course, but connection with other people, connection with nature, connection with all that is around us is what actually reflects and mirrors back to us our connection with ourselves. And so, yeah, community. Yeah, I've been really, really in the recent months very focused on like how can we bring more community um, to women, to people who have these really big hearts and have these really big visions and who have this capacity to really show the world, show other people how important it is that we are sensitive and how important it is that we are like connected and how important it is that we are like in collaboration with oneness, which then brings me back to nature as well.
Yeah. I love that in collaboration with oneness because when we look at it at the end of the day, we all do come from the same source.
Yeah.
And when we think of it that like I've just never heard that line in collaboration with oneness. And when we put it that way, it makes it seem like there's not a lot of pressure because we are in collaboration. And what we are in
Yeah.
collaboration with is the universal knowledge, is the universal like thread
Yeah.
that runs through everything and everyone. And I really want to dive into community first. I know we have a few
Mhm.
different things that we want to dive deeper into, like somatics and art and self-expression, but just the way that we found each other or I found you is through community, is through like communities intersecting, and then me being like, wait, it's time to have Jade on. So tell me a little bit about how community has impacted you in your journey and in your becoming and blooming.
Oh, I love your questions.
Thank you.
I would say, honestly, community has always been something that I have deeply desired and for a very long time didn't really fully feel like I had. And I think that there are, of course, communities that we're born into, right? There are the family, there's the family that we're born into, there's, the people you grow up with, your education, all of that. But I think I grew up, I think maybe like a lot of us who are probably listening to this podcast, like a lot of us grew up maybe feeling a little like black sheep or, like the black sheep of the family or in some ways almost feeling like we don't belong here. Um, in the matrix or don't belong here on this planet. Star seeds, light workers, whatever you want to call us. And I always just very much like carry that feeling of like really desiring belonging, but didn't really feel like I fit into any of the communities that were prescribed to me. And so this was actually a whole subconscious journey that I was on. But basically, throughout my entire life, I was really seeking it. Something that I actually recently realized, and I'll kind of share it here, is every like through college, through school, through high school, I did a master's degree. All of my papers and all of my dissertations, I recently had this aha moment, all centered around community. It was like just different elements, different perspectives of like, how do we form community? Um, in our city? How do we form community through art? How do we form community in virtual platforms? And so it's been this, I think, search for a long time for me personally. And I would say that finding community actually in the virtual realms was what really gave me my first taste, I suppose, of like, wow, there are other people out here who love to talk about the stuff that I love and who like share the same wavelength and frequency as I do. And I didn't feel like I had access to that really growing up and even into adulthood. So when I think my first taste of like the feeling of belonging in a community was actually the beginning of my spiritual awakening. This was about 5 years ago when I was actually going through a heartbreak and I started writing poetry. And I just felt this like deep desire to share my poetry. And I was like, oh, I don't want to share it with anyone I know. I don't feel ready for that. Don't really want to put my name to it either. And so I started an Instagram account and started just posting my poetry there. And I found a poetry community. Um, and I just started like that allowed me to connect with myself creatively and find so much liberation and like a sense of like a new sense of safety in that. And from then on, I've had this burgeoning love and curiosity for, creating online communities that allow for women, also all human beings, but I work mostly with women, um, allowing humans to really just connect globally on topics that really, really matter to us. Because ultimately, like at the end of the day, all of us are here to share, to be immersed in, to be proud, to own and claim the curiosities and innate gifts that we have, right? And yeah, like yeah, the online space has been a really, really just beautiful, I think, starting point for me finding that community. And then since then, like I've moved to Vancouver and I've also started to expand my physical community to find like-minded, lovely, soul-aligned sisters, um, and to like really build my sense of community like around me physically as well. Yeah.
Ooh, so much there. First things first. Do you know your sun, moon, and rising? I know that you're an Aries sun based on your post yesterday.
I am a Aries sun. I am a Capricorn moon and a Cancer rising.
Mm, okay, I love asking everyone that I have on here, sun, moon, and rising, because I love like seeing the signs play out as the conversation goes on.
Tell
And
me, I want to
you
hear.
said you said that it feels liberating, and that feels very like Aries, right? You need somewhere where you can feel free and liberated and amped up and like so excited to share your message with the world. And as a Cancer rising, it's like you need those people that make you feel comfortable, that make you feel seen, that nurture and mother you, because you do that as a Cancer rising. I'm sure you do that so
Mhm,
naturally for other people. And so
mhm.
naturally, when you do that for other people, especially Cancer, like you want to feel like you're loved too. You want to feel like, I'm just thinking about Cancer being inside the shell and imagine like two little spirits in that shell instead of one. How nice to like cuddle and be held. And so that's what I
I
think
love
of when I
that.
think of like Cancer.
Mm.
It's like just this nurturing. And so I also see how you're able to, as an Aries sun, like trailblaze and create this community. And with your Cancer rising, you're able to nurture the community. And with your Capricorn moon, you're able to create the structure. You're able to make it real and tangible. It's not just about the ether. It's not just about, virtual communities. It's now more about physical communities. And I
Mm.
resonate so much with everything that you said because we're on parallels. It's also like 5 to 6 years ago that I started waking up, and
Mm.
my initial wake up was with astrology. And similar to how you said you started feeling like you had to share your poetry, I started feeling like I have to share the astrology. And just like you, I did not want to put out an account with my name, so I put out an account called Starry Vibes. and and that was also my first taste into community and being like, wait, I'm not that weird. I actually do have people that are similar to me. And since then, it's just like snowballed into its own magical entity. But I love how we're on parallels. And I'm wondering if it is because we both grew up on this side of the world. I think you grew up in Hong Kong, did you?
Yeah, I did. Also, just thank you for those reflections. Like
Yes.
that just really touched me, I have to say. And yeah, I did grow up in Hong Kong.
You did.
Hmm.
And what was your journey like? So you grew up in Hong Kong and then
Ooh, I grew up in Hong Kong and I went to the US for university. And then I
where
wanted to
did you
stay in the
go?
US. I went to upstate New York. I went to a college called Vassar.
Okay.
Um, and I studied art history, I studied political science. Um, and yeah, I wanted to stay in the US, but it's very hard to stay in the US if you don't that you have a passport there. So I ended up going back to Hong Kong, and I did do a master's degree in London for a year, and then ended up back in Hong Kong again for a job, and then the pandemic hit eventually. I don't know if we're allowed to say the pandemic word, but I just said
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
And then yeah, a year and a half ago I moved to Vancouver. Are there parallels in that with your
Well,
story?
there are parallels in that I lived in Manila and then I went to study in Boston for college. And then from Boston, I did 3 months in LA and then lived in San Francisco for the rest of, so like 8 months and then moved back home. And then since I've moved back home, I've been here for the last like uh, eight, 8-ish years. But
Mm,
I do feel like growing up on this side of the world with like a more conservative background and more
mm,
conservative
mhm.
cultures, we don't necessarily see people that are weird like us. It's more like this is how you're meant to be and this is what you're going to be.
Yeah,
And everyone's kind of like a face, and you know that there's so much within that face, but they don't show much and they don't share much. And it's all about surface stuff that isn't
yeah,
really important.
yeah. I
um,
mean, yeah, surface was the word that kept coming to mind as you were sharing, and also like face as a concept. Is that a concept that you talk about in the Philippines, like saving face or needing face?
there is a yeah, kind of. There are local sayings that are closer to that, but yeah, definitely. There is a saying that's
Yeah.
like thick face, but there is also like saving face because so I grew up in the Philippines, but I am Indian. And so it's
Mm.
double the conservative background because I grew up in
Yeah.
the Philippines where it's already kind of conservative, and then I grew up in a very Hindu family. So it was
Mm.
even more. So then it definitely was about saving face, not sharing words that, not sharing about what's going on behind closed doors, very much
Yeah.
about saving face, like you're saying.
Yeah.
And it's kind of tricky because then we don't really end up getting to know ourselves as deeply because we kind of feel like we can't. There's that glass wall that we bump against each time we walk against it. So like for me, yes, Starry Vibes was one of my bigger community ways of finding community, but going to college in Boston, that was the first
Yeah.
time that I was like, oh, there are people that are just like me because I went to Emerson College, which is huge for art and the number one LGBTQ school in the US at that time. And so I was exposed to like complete opposite of what I was exposed to here.
Yeah.
And once you've been exposed, there is no way to be unexposed. Once you've seen what it feels like to belong and to have people that are similar to you around you, there is no other way. Because otherwise, I think we start feeling stifled. because now we know what exists within us.
It's like you've accessed your authenticity. And like once
Exactly.
you access your authenticity and you realize how good it feels to just be in your authenticity, which is what we're all here and meant to be. So it's our natural state, and it's, love for yourself, and it's just, yeah, it's like presence. It's like stillness within yourself. It's peace, right? Yeah, once you've kind of touched that and been in that, there always will be, I think, at least inside of me, it's felt like a fight against. Sometimes it feels like not a fight against, but yeah, kind of like there's like there's a part of me that is always just so aware now, and is almost like what comes to mind is like Mulan. I don't know why, like Mulan, like warrior spirit, like yeah, I'm like looking at my reflection in the pond and I'm like, this is me.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I very much, so funny. I like resonate with so many parts of your story as well. Um, but what comes to mind actually, I'll share is when I was in college, I think like coming from a traditional kind of conservative Chinese family as well. I like when I left for college, when I left for America, there was this, deep desire for like freedom. There was like this deep desire for like independence. And I think at that time I was so disconnected from my heart. I was so disconnected from my body. I was so just disconnected from myself that, even when I went to the US, when I went to college and I was surrounded by, wonderful people who I'm still friends with to this day, I still couldn't let myself land in it. And I was very, very numb. And I, used a lot of like vices and coping mechanisms to feel a sense of belonging and to feel like I belonged in community. But yeah, it like for me, it didn't really land until I was 26, 5 years old, 25, 26 years old.
Yeah, I think it really does take a second to land in our body, especially when we're coming from a different background, because I mean, what's coming into my mind's eye immediately is contraction, right? We're so used to being contracted or like to having to cover and hide and
Yeah.
just be this version of ourselves that when we go and we see that there are so many people actually being themselves so naturally because they've probably been doing it their whole lives, or maybe they've not been doing it their whole lives but they're more encouraged to share about themselves, then I feel like it's easier to contract also and be like, wait, but I don't know how to be as naturally here
Yeah.
as they know how to be here. So I'd love to know, how did your relationship with your body change?
Oh, so for me, I think my story with my body, I would say is less to do with body image and more to do with really just connection with my feeling and with yeah, with my feeling. And I would say that, oh, when did it begin to change? Mm, really only when I started when my spiritual awakening kind of began. And even then, actually, even then, when I, first started coming online and waking up, I was still very much in my head. I think for a lot of us who have had to learn from a young age in some way that being in your body or being in your body or being connected to yourself is somehow unsafe. You end up learning that you have to live in your head, right? You live in these stories and you live in these attachments and you live in um what you've kind of like constructed and what has been told to you growing up. And um even when I was on my awakening journey and I was starting to like realize, oh, like there's there's so much out here. There's so much to learn. I was still very, very much stuck in my head. I was always trying. Um, I was almost like meditating to get out of my body, very often meditating to like talk to my spirit guides and meditating to like ascend. And I got quite actually caught up in that for a while, until I realized that just something was very off. And I think naturally, maybe it was my soul just started calling me towards somatics. Like I just started seeing it honestly around. I was like, oh, what is this somatic thing that people are talking about? And I was at the time also doing my art therapy training. And one of my supervisors was like a somatic therapist as well. And so I was starting to get exposed to this concept of the body. And I was like, I never saw myself as someone who was disconnected from the body because I never had these very tangible body image issues that, um, can be a really prevalent thing for women and girls. Um, and so I never just made that connection. And yeah, I just kind of found myself drawn towards practicing somatic work for myself, using breath, connecting with my felt experience, and then realizing that, wow, actually, so much of spirituality and so much of our connection with ourself comes with, first and foremost, our connection with our senses and our connection with our emotions, not in the story of the emotions, but emotions as an actual feeling and energy in the body, and processing anything, processing emotion, processing trauma, processing your thoughts. It all happens in the body first. And when you can do that, when you can actually feel safe to like be here with your feeling and with your sensation, it is another, I would say, like another layer of freedom and connection and liberation that you gain access to. It's like a deeper connection with yourself. Um, yeah.
I find that so interesting because I think that when we do wake up, it's usually that similar path of it's time to channel spirit guides, or it's time to ascend, or it's time to meditate. And again, with the parallels, like when I started, it started with astrology, and then I started reading the Akashic records. So it was also very like up and out. And I was meeting a lot of resistance because then I was like, am I really that spiritual? Can I really access these things? And it's a whole mind game. And then I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna just start focusing more on astrology because at around that time I was getting married, planning my wedding, so it all became more body based as well. And then
Mhm.
just a couple years ago, I took this embodiment coaching training because I realized that I was already coaching in this way, like kind of like embodiment coaching through astrology, but it wasn't called embodiment coaching. It was like we would go into their astrology and we would talk about stuff and then we would create art from it. So it was pretty much that, but I didn't have the certification. So again, those mind
Yeah.
games of, okay, I want to know. It wasn't even just about the certification. It was, I want to know more tools to be able to help people because when you're going into this path, it's easy to be like, okay, I know enough and I can help people, but I also wanted to be like, I wanna have some, like tangible ideas that I can give them for them to be able to work with it with themselves, or for me to help them work through it. And it was a great idea. But I love that synchronicity as well, that parallel as well, because it really is about dropping into our bodies. Because as you were saying, like it's so important to have our relationship with our senses. And what I'm realizing too is, so many of us are trying to enhance our clair senses. But how can we
Mhm.
enhance our clair senses if we're not even in tune with our bodily senses,
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
literal vessel that we came into this planet with? If we don't know how to operate that, how are we trying to ascend out of it? And once we do
Yeah.
ascend out of it, how are we meant to get back in if we don't even know who we are?
Exactly. Exactly. And it's like, I mean, the simple phrase, as above, so below. And it's like we actually cannot ascend. Like we energetically, like it doesn't work. It gets stuck. Like you said, like resistance. You will meet resistance if you are not connected to earth because you are meant to be on earth, even as even as your frequency changes and it rises and you ascend, let's say you are still connected to earth, and um our bodies are made of earth. Like our bodies are earth. And so connecting with your body is a way that we ground. And I think for a lot of us, like spiritual folks, people who practice meditation, it's so important that our meditation practices are embodied, right? Embodied. And um, also something that, came forward as you were sharing was like so important as well for us facilitators and for us coaches and mentors to be connected with our own feeling, so that as we're coaching, as we're mentoring, as we're, sharing with our clients, we're we're clear on like what is being channeled and also clear on like our vessel, and we're not getting our own projections and our own stuff, our own like, mishmash energy mixed up in the purity of the coaching, right? And so I think, yeah, like bringing in that somatic awareness is so important in the offerings that we give, and also in just our own maintenance as beings who are in service.
So tell me a little bit about your process and how you coach and how you
Hmm.
lead and guide when it comes to somatics and art and everything that that entails.
Ooh, where do I begin? I would say that, hmm, big question. Okay. So we can start with how I love doing groups. Let's just start here. Like I love working with groups. I love being in circle with other women and with, other people. And I think that when it comes to I think when it comes to group work, there is a resonance, a very, very beautiful resonance that forms, and is very, very powerful when the group is landed together, and when we're kind of sharing from a place of like heart resonance. So like, this is you talk about artistry, and it's like, I'm sure you've mentioned on this podcast before at some point, like our heart is like thousand times stronger in like electromagnetic resonance than our brain. And dropping into our bodies is what allows us to access our heart. Otherwise, if we're not in our heart and we're not in our bodies, then we're going to be in our heads, right? And when we come into creating art, and when we come into sharing, and when we come into any kind of like group or community work, the resonance is so much stronger and higher, and you can like you can feel the energy that moves when the practice comes from a place of heart. And so how, we do that in group, always grounding, always landing in with, intention. Um, in my community, something that I really, an image that really always pops up for me and has been just like the symbol that I've been working with recently has been like the hearth. So like as, women who hold people who hold hands around a fire and dance and sing and create art, like that's what we're here to do. I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but like that's what, you know, as artists, as creatives, as people who have a strong message and who have gifts that you want to share, how we share it is really it really has to happen together. And it has to happen in connection. Going back to, what we were saying earlier about connection, and it's, bringing in art with this piece of like connecting with heart, connecting with body. Like, oh, there's so much I could say. Um, hmm. Like creative expression is the self expression that all of us know innately before language. Like before we learned English, before we learned whatever language we speak, before we learned past, present, and future and these constructs of linear language and time and all of this stuff, right? Like what we know as humans, what we are sensing all the time through our bodies is it's impressions, right? We sense color, we sense texture, we sense shape, we sense line, we sense frequency. And art, why I'm so passionate about art and like fostering creative expression in every single person, it is a language that all of us speak that is so liberating to speak when you let go of a lot of our conceptions of I'm not an artist. I didn't grow up doing art. I'm not good at art, so I can't make art. Letting go of all of that. Like art is a language that your body knows and your soul knows, and it is deeply felt. And so, when we also want to improve our relationships and we want to feel more connected to people, we want to feel more connected to um, our communities, our world, like the most powerful language that we can do that, the most moving language is art because it is just felt without explanation, it's felt without justification, it's just felt. And to create art from a somatic, embodied place is art that comes from truth. It's art that comes from your soul. And so it's so important.
I love that. All of that because, you mentioned the as above, so below. And the
Mm.
continuation is as within, so without, right? And so when we are actually in an embodied place, when we are um, yeah, when we are in our hearts, when we are in our bodies and we create art, we get to know versions of ourselves that we've never known before. And when we get to know these versions of ourselves, we get to share them. And also, we get to know versions of other people that we've never known before. Because again, as within, so without, it's all about mirrors. And I feel so passionately about everything that you shared because it's something very similar that I'm trying to do too. Like,
Yeah.
just awaken the artists within us all because to me like our lives is our art, like the way we live life, that's art. And if we want to create poetry or if we want to draw or if we want to paint out of it, that's amazing. And if we feel like we don't want to and we just want to live every day like as if it's, our life is this giant canvas and every day we wake up we have a
Mhm.
different color of paint or a different oil pastel, like that's fine too. And which is also why I really wanted to have you on here because I think it's so important to like preach this message of we are creative beings before anything. And there is so much language about how we're not good artists and ooh, that's an ugly painting and ooh, that doesn't look nice. But it's like, but what is ugly anyway? Is anything ugly? Not really. It's just because of perception. It's just because you've never seen anything like that. It's kind of like how people call people weird. It's like actually they're not weird, but you've never seen anything like that. So to you, it's weird. But to them, it's completely normal. So why are we going around and projecting our own thoughts on other people when actually we're all literally the same? We all have a piece of magic within us. We're all trying to share that, and we're all just trying to be seen for our most authentic selves. This is a really strange world that we're living in because there's so
I
much noise, right?
I love that so much. Every single word, I'm like, yes, yes, amen, preach. Like, as you're saying, like, what did you say? Like, we're all just our own, like, weird, but at the same time, we're all one. We're all connected. It's like we're all pieces of a puzzle. And of course, all of us are going to be shaped differently. Of course, we all have different colors and different, like, parts we're all parts of a different part of the whole puzzle. And so it's
Yes.
like, of course we're going to be different. That's the fucking
Yes.
point. And
Yes.
it's like that is the point. And so like how can we start to, yes, like get rid of a lot of these judgments and conceptions of like right, wrong, bad, good that we are so conditioned to think about everything through. And I think that a lot of it, does come from trauma. It does come from like living in a traumatized society and often like being conditioned by stories that come out of scarcity and fear, which causes that black and white thinking, which then has been normalized in just our, overall collective narrative. But it's like as someone who is listening to this podcast, as someone who is, somewhat conscious, very conscious, or, awaken, it's like we understand that we are artists, like we understand that we are creators, and that we all have agency, and that we don't have to live in the paradigms and in the stories and in the illusions that have been kind of given to us or structured around us. And in fact, it's our responsibility and it's our gift and honor. And I see it as like a privilege to be able to um, be the ones who are doing this beautiful work of like shedding these layers and talking about what's actually true and like leading from vulnerability and leading from authenticity and our passions and from color, you know? And I also think about, especially as women, like all of us humans are creators, but especially as women, like I always just really want to emphasize like we birth, we birth humans, we birth life. Like we have this capacity in our bodies to birth life. And in that, it's like we like just remembering like how truly like how powerful you are as an ideator, like how powerful you are as an artist, like from your feminine energy. Like you are all of us women, all of us have feminine energy in us, but it's like, especially as women, we are here to really embrace that about ourselves and to actually also create, and this brings us into a kind of another topic, but like we're here to create also not as masculine creators in the way that society has kind of like built creation to be, which is like force, action, do it, logic. We're here to create in a way that's connected back to nature, and we're here to create in a way that's cyclical and seasonal, and we're here to create in a way that is in co-creation. Um, and that's just something really just important that I think all of us women really like carry in remembrance with us.
I love this idea and this concept of co-creation because I feel like it is what we're doing every single day. We wake up, we're co-creating, we're not creating on our
Mm.
own. There is a story that's playing out, and it's on us to choose. what we're going to
Yeah.
choose, because depending on each choice, that changes the story completely,
The
right?
game.
It's a game. It's a game. I wrote something a while ago, like a long time ago, and it was it's not a game of the mind, it's a dance of the heart. And I feel like that's really just what I'm trying to embody more and more as life goes on, as time goes on. Like it's really just our hearts all dancing together and creating and just remembering the joy of being alive. I think in with so much noise, with so much trauma, with so much going on in the world, and none of it is wrong, of course, but with all of this going on, I think it's so important to have the people who remember the light, who bring it back, who help more people find it. And when we say light worker, it may sound a little bit more disconnected now, which is why I like to use hardest. It's more like
Mhm.
in, it's here, we're here.
Mhm.
Um, but I wanted to ask you two questions. My first question is, what do you have to say about consistency? Because I feel like this is a word that's brought up very often, and
Mhm.
especially by when we think of like the masculine way of working, consistency is a big word. But when we think of the feminine way of working, cyclicality is a big word. So it's like, how can we be cyclical without getting lost in the I need to be consistent, especially with this whole algorithm game that we're playing, like that we're choosing to be a part of. And my second question is, do you have one or two specific somatic practices that you would be able to share for anyone that's getting very lost in their heads?
Hmm. Yeah. So, love this. To the first question around consistency, I would say that, of course, like you can use a lot of this is about language. It's about the energy with which you use language. And so, consistency, if that is a word that like speaks to your, I don't know, your Virgo, right? If it speaks to your generator, then there's nothing inherently wrong with it. But it's just, I think, also being aware of like there is consistency that we can find within our cycles as well, and there is consistency that we can find while still being connected to like what our body needs, our nervous system, right? Like noticing, is my nervous system getting into a flight mode, over flight mode? Is it, am I getting dysregulated? Am I starting to run in a hamster wheel unconsciously that's making me feel burnt out? Well, that's when you realize it's like, okay, something is off, right? And like consistency isn't bad. Consistency is like a beautiful, I think, masculine quality. But it's about the energy with which you kind of uh, use that word. And I would say that a word that has instead really been supportive for me has been devotion. Devotion as opposed to consistency. And they kind of have, you could say, overlapping meaning, but devotion to me is so much more connected to the heart. It's so much more connected to um, in service to yourself or in service to your business or in service to your family, whatever it is that is using up a lot of your energy and you have a lot of responsibilities around. See it as devotion, like see it as an act of love. And as much as you devote yourself to, I'm going to use the example of business, like as much as you devote yourself to your business, you also devote to yourself and you also devote to your family. And it's like it's also remembering like what is of the highest good to actually be embodying. Like what actions actually align with your highest good. And when you take actions that are aligned with your highest good, they will always, always be in service and in the highest good of everyone connected to you as well. And so, like, getting too caught up in like that narrative of like consistency or like this is what someone had like told me I have to do in order to achieve success, that is us basically putting ourselves and pigeonholing ourselves back into the paradigms that we want to break out of. So, yeah, instead, kind of seeing it all as devotion from a place of love and from a place of like service and care. And in terms of your second question around a somatic art practice that would be, supportive for someone who maybe is quite up in the head, quite up in your mind. You want to, learn how to drop into your body. I would say I'm going to offer two. Um, the first one, very simply, is just starting to tune into your breath. Notice how when you breathe, you inhale and there's a rise, and you exhale and there's a fall. And just following, like tracing that rhythm in your body. And then literally just grabbing a pen and having a piece of paper and just tracing your breath. Inhale up, exhale down. Inhale up, exhale down. And they kind of like, it'll start looking like an inverted S shape or like mountains that you're drawing. And just doing that over and over as a practice of mindfulness um, is a beautiful way that we can just ground into our own energy and just become mindful of how our bodies are feeling. And my other um, practice that I love to always share is bilateral drawing. So bilateral drawing is when you use two hands to draw, and you're pretty much intuitively drawing. Um, and what I would recommend with this is like taking some breaths into your body, see if you can get grounded, feel into your heart space, breathe into your heart space, and then from this feeling of your heart space with your two hands, your two pencils, pens, just creating these strokes outward and inward, and then playing around with circles, different shapes, chasing and following your two hands one after the other. And what bilateral drawing does is that it brings us back to center. It engages both the right and left hemispheres of our brain, and it brings us back into the sense of like balance. It also does help reprocess memory and trauma and emotion, but really here just with the intention of like it's a way for us to access our heart um, from a feeling place without any stories, without needing to, yeah, without, I think often when we like talk about processing or we talk about therapy, we talk about, um, just growth or anything like this, we often get very caught in like talk, 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 right? Like sharing in the talk way. Um, but there is a lot to be said about feeling. And sometimes all we need to do is just feel. And we don't need to make a story from it. And then that just is the energy that gets to move. And then that's that. And so it is.
I mean, it's an alchemical process, isn't it? It's like we're feeling this thing and we're getting it out. And once it's out, we don't really need to keep thinking about it. We don't need to be in that hamster wheel just coming back again and again. I love
Mhm.
how you made it so simple. It actually is that simple. We love to overcomplicate things, and we're going to be rounding up in a couple of minutes here. I have two last questions for you, but before I go into my two last questions, um, what you're saying or these practices that you shared. So something I believe strongly in is foreplay for creating art. I feel like when we want to create art, it's so important to have that foreplay time where we're doing things that are just like getting the energy flowing. And the
Mm.
two practices that you shared sound like, well, amazing emotional releases if you want to do it by itself. But if you want to use it as foreplay for creating more art as well, I think those are such beautiful practices because we're just like getting loose and getting into our hearts and we're getting into our bodies. And when we are in that body place, in that heart place, then we don't judge what's coming out of us anymore, right? Then we don't think that the art that we're making is bad art. There's no such thing again as bad art. It's just art. We're just expressing ourselves. And at the end of the day, that's the goal. Isn't radical self expression the goal? Because If yes, then that's it. We don't need to be buying into the stories. We don't need to be telling more stories about the kind of artist that we are. It just ends with, I'm an artist. I'm a artist. That's it. You don't need to explain why. You don't need to explain how. You don't need to explain what kind of art you do. It's just like we just embody it and we know it and it's real and it's felt.
Yes, 100% yes. And love the idea of foreplay. That's so good. And I would say, like, if even this, even those two exercises feel like you can't quite get into it and you're still overthinking, my recommendation would be like the foreplay could be to play some music, dance. Sometimes dance can sometimes be a way that we bypass, but very often it can also be a way that we can like really connect with our primality. And it's fun. And it's something that, like, if you do it in the privacy of your own home, you don't have to worry about what you look like. And all of us actually, I believe, love dancing, and looking silly and feeling silly and making a fool of ourselves. We love it when we're in our own privacy. And so do that. And then come into a stiller practice with your breath and let all of that energy land in, one of those practices that I just shared, um, or whatever else floats your boat.
Yeah, everything is always a suggestion. Whatever works, works. If it doesn't work, drop it. But we're just happy to have these conversations and just share a little bit of what's inside us. And I mean,
Mm.
1 hour is so short to share what's inside us. So this is a little glimpse. If you're interested in working with Jade, please share with us. Well, first of all, please share with us what you feel like makes you a artist. And then I would love to know where people can work with you and how they can find you.
What makes me a artist? I simply just deeply believe in the heart of every single person on this planet, 8 billion of us. All of our hearts are here with such a big, massive purpose and gift. And when I say massive, I don't mean like massive as in global change, right? I just mean massive in depth and massive in whatever meaning that takes in your life. But all of us are living, beating, breathing souls that, our souls are living through the beating of our heart. And we're all connected through the electromagnetic current that is just running through our hearts every day. And like, I'm gonna keep it short. I could go on, but I was gonna talk about how, like, I mean, like, really quickly, all of us living through our hearts, like, if we trust that we are all connected by that frequency, then we can trust that we are all supported and that we can live from a place of heart, and that other people, ultimately all of us, really just want to see the heart in others, and all of us actually really crave, you know that sense of unconditional love, divine love. And so, um that just kind of is a piece that wanted to come through. But what makes me a artist, coming back to that, is I just really deeply believe in the power of our hearts and in the power of the art that we create from heart, and how that is the healing that the world really needs.
I love it. The more we are all in our hearts and the more we share our heart's message, the more people feel seen. Like we
Yeah.
when we share a sentence, that's so many words. And for all we know, like just one of those words can appeal to a different person. So say we share a sentence with like 8 words, before we know it, we're actually touching 8 hearts with each of those different words because each word
Mhm.
resonates differently with a different person. So I think
Mhm.
we are in such a habit of downplaying the difference that we make in the world. But when
Yeah.
we actually feel into it, we're actually making a bigger difference than we can imagine.
Yes, and it's a like a web truly that we're all weaving. Like think about the ripple effect of like you, all of us coming deeper into our hearts, shining our light from that place of like, that depth inside of us, that like true authentic frequency that actually makes you light up, makes you feel magnetic, and allows you to inspire and touch others. Think about even within your family, even within your very small corner of your community, like how your light touches another person and that person's light lights up from you and lights up to another. And it's just like this ripple effect that like that translates across time and space. And we will never know, but we're not meant to know. And yeah, I love what you said there. Like we are making greater impact than we often allow ourselves to see. And that's not something to be afraid of. That's something to be like celebrate that, like with others and in yourself. Yeah.
I love that. And I think that's something that we get to do in community. So tell us about where people can find you, how they can work with you,
Yeah.
and anything you want to share about your community as well.
Yeah, so you can find all of my most recent updates and all of the good stuff on Instagram mostly. So you can find me at it's Jade Chung, I'm sure. Karina will share all of the info in the show notes. But yeah, you can find me on Instagram. You can also find my offerings on my website. But at this time, I am in a very large, you want to call it purging, cleansing process of kind of my business and how I've been working and coaching for the last few years. Um, Coming back to community, I am focusing all of my energy onto community these days. And so a new initiative that I have birthed this year is called the Creatrix Collective. And it is a platform for visionaries, artists, creatives, mystics, dreamers who who resonate with this frequency of the new earth and who are here to generate positive impact in their communities through this place of soul purpose and heart and your unique medicine. Just this idea of being like unique pieces of the puzzle, right? And I really, really believe in community being the place where actually all of us can rise and all of us get to rise through collaboration, not competition. And so, yeah, I'm creating this space that I hope, is going to become like a new earth ecosystem of its own, and where creatives can empower and uplift each other to essentially ascend towards their dreams. And um, that's how we shift the global collective consciousness.
I love it so much. I feel like when we have a message in our heart, or like when we do something, all we need is one person more often than not, like one cheerleader to be like, I see you. I see your heart in what you're doing. And to have a whole community of people with similar values to see us and to uplift us and to just be there with us as we're going through
Yeah.
what we're going through. I think that is revolutionary because we can't anymore rely on stuff like Instagram for community. It's so important to bring it out of there. It's so important
Yeah.
to rise out of there. Like, I think it's a great place to meet people and to start communicating. But then there
Mhm.
needs to be somewhere outside of Instagram, I feel like, that we can connect and go deeper in. And I think that's
Go
something you're
deeper.
doing beautifully.
Thank you. And I also wanted to just very like last thing add here. It's like it's so important to have a live element to the way that we connect as well. Like Instagram is of course beautiful, but like you said, um it's still in some ways quite like there's a feeling of separation or there are, walls and like there's a sense of like an image that you have to build or that often you kind of end up building with a brand, right? But yeah, like having a space where there are live gatherings where you can, land into. We're doing creative facilitations in there, and we have salons that where people are invited to bring their art into, and where we're witnessing each other, and um, initiations that we walk through together on a monthly basis. It's like a feeling of solidarity and just togetherness. Yeah. And so if you are interested in joining the collective, um, I will share with Karina the application link to apply.
That is perfect. I'll add it to the show notes. I'm in there. I haven't been able to go on the Kajabi page as much as I want to, or as much as I've been wanting to, but I'm really excited to explore more because there is a lot in there. There's a lot of resources, and I'm so excited to make it to the next live call because, like you're saying, it's always different. Like, it's always different when you're doing a replay or a live, or when you're watching something, or when you're actually there. And so I
Mhm.
cannot wait to be there in the live juices and the live magic. And I'm just so grateful. Thank you, Jade, for coming on here and sharing your heart and sharing, just everything that means the world to you. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for this beautiful conversation. I feel like we're really, really on the same wavelength. We share the same mission, and I feel so seen by you. So thank you for having me.